Okay. So you're welcome. We're going to look at the overview of strategic management. That will be our lecture 1, and that is on chapter 1. So here we'll be discussing the meaning of strategic management, the stages of strategic management, components of strategic management, strategic change, continuous improvement, competitive strategy, the meaning or definition of strategy, attributes of strategic decisions, theoretical underpinnings of strategic management, and then the benefits of strategic management. Lecture 1 is very, very important, as you can see from this outline, because it will address all the major concepts that we have to know under strategic management. All right. So we're starting with the meaning or definition of strategic management. Okay. So strategic management is the art and science of formulating, implementing, and evaluating cross-functional decisions that enable an organization to achieve its objectives. Right. So there are some key terms that we have to know. That strategic management is first and foremost an art, and then also a science. What do we know? What do we understand by the meaning an art? When we say something is an art, what does it mean? Frederick. An art. Osborne. Guys,
So,
participate.
This is Osborne.
Okay.
So when we say an art, management is an art. I think it's a way of appreciating creativity, something that we can express it in a way of brainstorming or trying to appreciate something out of the blue, or trying to create something without any structure.
What about the science? Or you say something?
Science is something that is being structured. It has a head and a tail, and it has to follow a specific principles to achieve the specific goals.
Beautiful. So that is the whole idea. So in strategic management, the manager is supposed to exhibit the attributes of arts as well as science. Okay. The science aspect will give us the stages, the principles, the guidelines for strategic management. But in the course of following these principles or guidelines of strategic management, you need some level of personal creativity and flair for it to be successful. Okay. I always use the example of the say motivation, how to motivate employees. So if you read from the text, they will tell you, what is it? Maybe greet your subordinates every morning, maybe praise them when they do something that is right or in a positive light. But people, based on their upbringing and personality, tends to have different ways of even motivating in terms of even greeting. Okay, somebody will just smile at you and you feel okay about that. Another will say hello, and the hello may sound like an insult because of their personality and what they bring to bear. So it is not just knowing what it is, but as Osborne indicated, it calls for your personal ingenuity in order for it to be successful. Okay, and the science aspect is the fact that there are laid down guidelines and principles that must be followed when you undertaking strategic management. Okay, and the definition gives us a clue. There is a science, art and science of formulating. So we have the first stage of strategic management, which is formulation, implementing, and evaluating. So these are 3 stages: formulating strategy, implementing strategy, and evaluating strategy. Okay, so evaluating cross-functional decisions that enable an organization to achieve its objectives. The other key term we have to note is cross-functional decisions. In strategic management, you want to pull all the functional areas of a business together in order to be able to achieve the objectives of the organization. So if you're into strategic management, you won't be seeking to solve functional problems, but you're actually seeking to integrate all the functional areas of the business to work together in order to move the company or the organization towards a particular direction. Okay, so strategic decisions will call for the collaboration of marketing department, finance and accounting, production and operations, IT, all the functional areas must actually be working together in order to help you achieve your goals. So that is the other attribute of strategic management that we have to know. All right. The next thing is that strategic management focuses on long-term purpose or goals of an organization. All right. You just have to know in business, normally when we use the word strategic, it connotes long-term perspective. When we use the term operational, normally we're dealing with the day-to-day activities of the organization. So in strategic management, we are not so much bothered about the day-to-day operations of the organization. Okay, the focus is more of about positioning the company in such a way that it can perform better in the future. So that is another thing that we have to know as far as the meaning of strategic management is concerned. All right. Okay. So yes, so this is what we saw in the definition as being the stages of strategic management. So we have strategy formulation, strategy implementation, and strategy evaluation. From the way they sound, okay, that is it. Under strategy formulation, we'll be learning about the things that you have to consider when you're formulating a strategy for an organization, okay? What is a strategy even, and how can you formulate a strategy for an organization? Strategy implementation, what do we have to know when it gets to the execution of this strategy that we formed? All right, is deemed to be the most difficult aspect of strategic management, because normally the strategy formulation will be taking place in offices, in hotels, in conference rooms with air conditions and so on and so forth. But the execution calls for the actual work that must be done in order to implement the strategy that has been formulated. Okay, then we move to the last stage, which is strategy evaluation. All right. You now have to go and assess and find out whether what you said you wanted to do by way of your strategy formulation, you were able to achieve that. So you have to evaluate the strategy. Here also we'll be learning about what we need to know as far as strategy formulation is concerned. Okay. So these are the issues that we'll be looking at under strategy formulation. When you're formulating a strategy, you want to be thinking about developing a mission and a vision and a mission for the organization. All right. So we said in our definition that strategic management looks at long-term perspective. And this implies that businesses must first and foremost know their vision, where they are going, before they can formulate a good strategy to get to that end. So the first thing that you should be thinking about when you want to formulate the strategy for an organization is to have a good vision and mission for that particular organization. They are both vision and mission is a topic, or they are issues that we'll be discussing, I think, in lecture 3 or 4. Okay, but vision is the long-term destination that the organization wants to get to. The mission is what the company or the business is currently doing in order to get there. we have to be clear in our mind what the vision and the mission is. Then we can then think about the strategies that we have to put in place in order to get to our vision. Okay. The next point is that we need to identify the organization's external opportunities and threats. So what we're seeking to do in strategic management is to be able to take advantage of opportunities that exist in our environment, the external environment. And so without your knowledge of these opportunities, what it implies is that you will not be able to take advantage of them. So it is important that you know the opportunities that exist in the external environment of the business in order to be able to take advantage of these opportunities. All right. In a similar vein, it is not just opportunities that you want to be concerned about. You also must be concerned about the threats that could be coming from the external environment. Okay. We'll be looking at the details much later, but just to say that these opportunities and threats are likely to be coming from what is known as the select factors. So external environment, we have the political environment, we have social, we have technological, we have economic. Now we're talking about demographic and environmental. These variables are likely to be where, as a strategist, you have to be looking at in order to identify your opportunities as well as your threats. So you don't just go about formulating strategy. You have to know the opportunities, and you also have to know the threats that exist in order to be able to draft or carve out a very good strategy. All right. The next thing you have to know, closely related to this, is that you have to know the internal strengths and the weaknesses of your organization. A similar explanation goes for that. All right. So you want to be able to take advantage of opportunities. You want to be able to achieve your goals and objectives. The only way to be able to do that is when you ride on your strengths and find a way to minimize your weaknesses. Okay. At a personal level, I'm sure that whatever program that you're currently doing, you didn't just look at opportunities, okay, but you also looked at your strength, whether you be capable of reading either MBA oil and gas or MSc environmental studies, whatever it is. All right. But I'm sure you will have known that certain opportunities exist for coming to read this particular program. And you won't just run after the opportunities. You want to also assess yourself, whether you have the strength, what it takes to be able to read this master's program that you've currently enrolled on. All right. So for organization, that is also important. They have to know their strengths. Not only their strengths, they also must be mindful of their weaknesses in strategy formulation. All right. When we have this appreciation of our vision, our mission, external opportunities and threats, our internal strengths and weaknesses, then it provides a good platform for the organization to be able to now set their long-term objectives. Okay. Why? Because the objectives must be realistic. If you don't know your strength and you just set any objectives at all, you might be deceiving yourself. If you don't know the opportunities and the threats that exist in the external environment, you may not be setting very realistic long-term objectives. So the next logical step after knowing your strengths and weaknesses is now to establish long-term objectives. Okay. After these long-term objectives have been set, now we move to the next stage, where we now generate alternative strategies. So we want to achieve a certain objective in 5 years, 10 years time. What are the various options, alternatives that will help us to be able to get to these particular objectives that we've set for ourselves? So that is the next stage. All right. Then the next is to be able to assess and analyze the various strategies and pick the one that we think will be most feasible for us to be able to achieve our objectives. So there could be several options available. For example, if it is, say you want to increase some market penetration to be able to gain access to a particular market more, there are several alternatives that could be pursued. Anybody to help me with an example or options? You want to saturate a particular market with more of a particular product. What are the various options that you may have in order to get into that particular market? So you can click on the hand signal if you want to make a contribution. If I'm not getting any hand, I'll ask Swansea. Swansea, can you help us? What are the options? Yes, Apia Kubi.
Hello, Prof. Hello, Prof.
Yes.
Yeah, there should be.
I'm saying that if you want to sell more of your existing product into a particular market or an existing market, what are the options available to be?
Yes.
Yes.
In my view.
Yes, I'm asking for your view.
Yeah, in my view, I think there should be a serious training for the salesmen, the salespeople.
So to you, training for salespeople could be one option.
Yes.
Any
yes,
other?
Please.
Any other option? Yes. Osborne?
In my view, to consider the competitive advantage, looking at the price, the percentage of the price,
So
and then the customer service as well.
I want the specifics. What will you do with regards to price?
I'll adjust it either to increase or decline it to a specific amount that to suit.
Okay.
And what circumstance
will you want to increase your price if you want to penetrate a particular market?
Can you please come again?
Under what circumstance will you, for example, want to increase price if you want to penetrate a particular market?
I'll consider the competitive advantage of the product first.
You said?
The competitive advantage, looking at other companies or industry.
Okay, so
set the price not to inflate it too.
So basically, you deal with the price. Any other option? What other option is available?
Customer satisfaction as well.
What do you mean by customer satisfaction?
So I'll consider how the customer.
What will you do? Don't just mention terms. What will you do?
I'll listen to their view, their grievances, and I'll try to address it to suit how to benefit both parties, being the company and the customers.
All right. So if we were to continue with this exercise, we could come with, say, 10 options or more as to how to sell more to our customers. Okay. After the brainstorming session, coming out with several things that we're seeking to do, the next stage, as we've seen, is to assess each of them. All right. For example, the example that you gave, Apia could be with regards to increasing prices. When you move away from the brainstorming session, somebody might argue that might not be a feasible strategy to pursue. Okay, given our current economic circumstances where people want to save. Obviously, if you increase prices, the demand for that particular product may fall and so on. It's just an example to illustrate what I'm seeking to say. Okay, so after you've generated alternatives, the next stage is to pick the most feasible option to implement. Okay, right. So these are some core issues that we have to consider when we are into strategy formulation. First, develop a vision and a mission for the organization. Second, identify the organization's external opportunities and threats. Next, determine the internal strengths and weaknesses of the organization. It is only then that you can establish long-term objectives. After you set your long-term objectives, you generate alternative strategies to help you achieve these long-term objectives. And after that, you pick or select the most feasible strategy to pursue. Okay, right. So beside this core stuff, under strategy formulation too, you'll be making some key decisions in the following areas. When you are formulating a strategy, most of the time it borders on these issues. One, you're making a decision whether you want to enter a new business or not, all right? So there's some correction. It's not new, it's new business. All right. So it's a decision that you have to make whether you want to enter into a new business or you don't want to get into a new business. The next point is closely related to that. What businesses to abandon? So strategy is not all about coming or entering into new businesses. Sometimes strategy involves you quitting or leaving certain businesses. All right. You might have done the analysis and you found a particular business. You have a group of businesses, right? You may realize that one company is actually derailing in terms of your profits. So part of strategic decision is to let go of that particular division or that particular type of business. So if you're into strategy, it is not always about entering into new businesses. Sometimes strategic formulation could involve abandoning a business that is not profitable or that is causing you to run at a loss. All right. Most of the time, I use the example of restaurants, or how do you even call it? The common ones, chop by, yes, restaurants and places that we go to eat. We have some that normally sell water in addition to the food. Okay, but most of the time when we go there to eat, we feel very reluctant to pay for the water. Sometimes you just feel you are entitled to the water. Okay, so when they serve you the food plus the water, you might pay for the food, but most of the time feel reluctant to pay for the water or the drinks that accompany the food. All right. So a good business person, at the end of the day, will do an analysis and find out that probably the losses or decrease in revenue is not coming from the main food that he or she is selling. It's rather coming from the water that is being served alongside the food. All right. So if you are strategic and you know about strategic management, the best option is to stop selling the water. Because whilst most patrons will want to pay for the food, they feel reluctant to pay for the water. Okay, so part of strategic management is to know which businesses to let go. Because once again, it could be that you don't have the strength for it, the opportunities there are limited, the growth potential for that area or industry is limited, and so on and so forth. Okay. The next decision is whether to expand operations or diversify. So very close to what we've explained earlier. You want to be making a decision. If the current business has potential, then you may be thinking about expanding your operations. Okay. If you foresee some danger or you just want to diversify your risks, you may want to diversify into other businesses instead of expanding your current operations. So making a decision as to whether to expand your current operations or diversify into other businesses is another important decision that is made under strategic formulation. Strategy formulation, all right? You'll be making decisions whether to merge or form a joint venture. As your business expands and grow, or as you even seek to expand your business, sometimes you may have to make a decision whether you want to form a merger or a joint venture with another company. All right, merge with another company or form a joint venture with another company. There is some technical differences in terms of how accounting or financial statements are treated, whether it's a merger or a joint venture. That is why we have the order. But basically, it's the idea of you now wanting to join another company or expand by buying into another company. So you'll be making a decision. Do I still want to grow organically alone, or I want to form some partnerships with other businesses in order to grow my organization? Okay. Next point or decision is how to avoid a hostile takeover. That is another important decision that will be made in strategy formulation. As the business grows and makes more profits, you have other companies or investors that will be looking at it closely. Okay, so you want to have a good discussion with your other equity holders or shareholders of the company as to whether you guys will want to sell part of the owners to other investors, or you want to retain the ownership of the business. That is very, very important, because if you don't have that kind of discussion or agreement, some investors could be buying shares from your other partners, and by the time you know it, you've lost the decision-making power of your organization. So as the business, especially when the industry is profitable and the business is profitable, your strategy formulation must be mindful of the possibility of a hostile takeover from rivals or other investors. And then you find a way to actually deal with it before it happens. All right. Any question, any comment, any contribution so far? So together with the earlier stuff that we discussed, makes up our strategy formulation. If you want to formulate a strategy, these are the things that we have to be looking at. Okay. Then we come to strategy implementation. All right. We are assuming that we've decided. And most of the time when we talk about this strategy, they are basically decisions that the company has decided to embark upon. All right. They may entail doing certain things. So the names have been given in order for you to appreciate what these strategies are. But basically, when you break them down, they are decisions that have been taken by your company. Okay. Some of them, we've looked at them, whether to expand, whether to diversify, whether to go into joint ventureship. These are all examples of strategies. All right. So if you decide, or we decide on what we want to do, the next stage is, what do we have to do? We have to go into the implementation stage. And at this stage, there are issues that we have to be mindful of or take into account. Okay. The first point there is setting of annual objectives. If you remember, under formulation, either the fifth or the sixth point, we spoke about setting long-term objectives. Okay. But when you get to the implementation stage, you'll now have to be thinking about setting annual objectives. The logic is that at the implementation stage, you have to take things very gradually and incrementally. All right. So you want to increase or achieve a particular target in 10 years' time. You cannot do that 10 years objective, achieve those 10 years objectives in 1 year. All right. But if you were to break that particular objective down yearly, the whole idea is that by the time you get to your 10th year, you will have achieved the target that you set for yourself. Okay. Once again, I normally use undergraduate studies, CGPA as example, if you have your long-term objectives to become a first-class student, you cannot get all of your 4.0 or 3.6 in your first year. All right. So all that you have to do each semester is, this time around, it's not even yearly. A semester per semester or by semester. Make sure every semester you get at least 3.6, or sometimes if you are fortunate, 3.55, they will convert that for you. Once you consistently get your 3.6 throughout your stay in the university for each semester, you are guaranteed that you'll be able to get the first class that you are dreaming about. All right. So you have your long-term objectives, but when it gets to the implementation, you have to reduce that to annual objectives. So under strategy implementation, we set annual objectives and not long-term objectives. All right. The other thing that we do under implementation is to develop policies. Okay, I'm sure in your companies you have policies. Anybody to give me an example of a policy in your company? Or explanation of what a policy is, and some example of a policy that you currently implement in your organization. Frederick, I'm assuming all of you are employed.
Yes, please.
Or Frederick, you are unemployed graduate.
No, please, I'm employed.
Okay. Why is it? Please speak loudly.
Oh, okay, sir.
Yes.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so a policy is a laid down procedures or guidelines that determine the actions in a company. For example, policy on discipline. So the policy on discipline outlines how workers or staff should go about their daily activities in the company, the do's and the don'ts in the company. Thank you, sir.
So, example of a policy in your company.
So,
Is there any policy in your company?
HR policy.
What is it? What is it? I want specifics.
So, in my earlier submission, I made mention of policy on discipline.
Yes.
Discipline.
Yes. So what happens in your company? I want an example. Discipline is too broad. When what happens, and so on and so forth. I want the specifics.
Okay, so over here, you are not supposed to be drunk or taking alcohol during working hours.
Okay.
So when it's found out that during working hours you have alcohol on you or you are drunk.
You are not supposed to be taking alcohol during working hours.
Yes, please.
What type of business or company is that? Not necessarily the name of the company, but what are you guys into?
Okay, so it's an oil and gas company.
Oil and gas company.
Yes,
okay. And you are not supposed to take alcohol. Is it taking of the alcohol or getting drunk?
Even alcohol is not supposed to be on you. Even if you are not drinking it, it's not supposed to be on you at all.
Okay. But do they sell alcohol around your premises?
No.
All right. So what happens if somebody takes alcohol? What are the consequences? Yeah.
So the person will face the disciplinary committee and might be suspended, and if the instance occurs again, finally may be sacked.
Okay. So the first one, you may be suspended. If it continues, you will be sacked. Freddie, why do you think this policy is in place in your organization? What is the rationale for that policy?
I said because looking at the nature of our activities over here, you are drunk and
please speak loudly. Please speak loudly.
So I'm saying that due to the nature of the activities or the work we do over here, if you lose hold of your mind of what you are doing, and the slightest mistake you do will cause a disaster in the country.
Right. So it has the potential to derail the company from actually achieving its target. In fact, from your explanation, it could have national effect, negative consequences. All right.
Yes, please.
Yes. So that's the idea. No matter the strategy that the company might have in order to grow and expand, without policy, somebody can just get drunk and destroy everything that they want to achieve as an organization. So at the implementation stage, what is critical is to have policies, guidelines that will regulate the behavior of employees. This is the point where you want to get everybody on board in order to achieve the objectives that you've set for yourself. But without policies, human behavior is such that people will not want to participate or work hard for the organization. Okay, so at this stage, we need guidelines, we need rules, we need regulations, all right, to ensure that the implementation of the strategy becomes a success. All right, very close to that, at this stage, you have to be capable of motivating employees. And the logic is the same. This is the stage where you need everybody to participate and work hard. Apart from having the right policies in place, you also must have motivational packages that will propel employees to give up their best in the organization. Okay. Then the last one is that you need to be allocating resources at this stage. You may have a beautiful strategy, but the execution or implementation will normally call for the resources to be made available to your employees. If you don't make such resources available, no matter how beautiful that strategy is, it might not be well executed for lack of resources. So at the implementation stage, the other important thing is to make resources available to your subordinates or employees. Okay. Any questions so far? Any contributions so far? Are we fine?